Hey guys, George back again. Today in studio, I'm going to be showing you guys how to make the GrooveScript, which is basically my first version of the dirt script to have a changing dirt surface. It's very simple, and we're going to go over the process of how to set it up and how to code, even making the whole GrooveScript from scratch. Hopefully you guys will learn a few things along the way that will help you out in the rest of your Roblox career. So first things first, I just want to talk about what we have going on with my screen here. So this mode I have in the middle is called Emulator Mode and allows you to change to different devices. So you can get kind of different resolutions to look at. I always set mine to 1920 by 1080, so that's why you see the black backgrounding around it, is just because I have a 4K screen, so I have enough room to be able to deal with that. And it just gives me a nice good view window. You don't need to do this, but I just figured I would recommend this to anybody that likes this. And then in our view, you're going to see what I have selected. So we have Explorer and Properties, and that's Explorer here, and then Properties. And Properties, whenever I click something, shows me the properties. So with parts, you can see changing color and all sorts of good stuff like that. So we're going to make this into some grass. And then I have a toolbox over here. You can see that's from there. And then output and command bar are down here. And all that is I can run a command like so. And it will go into the output. But also when we test the game, any errors we find are going to go here. And these are some errors from plugins I have. So those end up in the output as well. So to start out, we need a track. And to show you guys that this can really be done with any track, we're going to go ahead and get a track from the models. So we'll type in racetrack. And don't want to get something too close to the top. I want to kind of show that it can really be done with anything. So I'll scroll down a little bit. Go with this one, Cool Racetrack by Jam Justin. So we got our track here. And the first thing we need to do is select all the parts of the track that are the track surface itself. So it's all this gray parts here. So I'm holding down Alt, and that allows me to select objects inside of a model. And then if we hold down Control while also holding down Alt, we can select multiple objects inside of a model. So this allows us to select all the pieces. And once I have them all selected, or think I have them all selected, what I like to do is I like to take the Move tool and then move it into the sky and kind of see, okay, I have all these gray pieces. Did I leave any behind? Nope. Okay. So then we hit Control G, and that's going to group that into a model by itself. And then for this particular case, I'm actually going to, for this particular case, I'm trying to get to this model here. So I'm going to move this model out. I'm going to get rid of the rest of it because we don't need the walls or anything else for this purpose. We just need the track, and so it'll work out a little easier. And then what I also like to do, for me, is I'll take the base plate here, and I'll just move it up slightly so we don't have so much of a bump going into the racetrack. So right here I went too far because it's set to one stud, so we'll do 0.1, and then we just kind of go until we see the track pop through like so. As we can see, it's just barely above. It'll just make it smoother to deal with. And then we have some clipping here. So actually we can maybe move this down just one more click. There we go. And that'll work. So now we got our track. We got our base plate set up how we want. And so first things first, I'm going to name all these parts track surface. You don't have to do this, but it just makes it easier later. And I can see there's arrows, meaning there's something inside. So I'm going to right click and then do select children, also Control Q. And we can see there's a bunch of fire inside, so we'll go ahead and delete all those. Now, because it's supposed to be for a dirt track, we're going to give it some dirt color. So right there, I just selected all the children like I had done before. And that gives me all the parts, and then I made it brown. And we'll name this truck surface. So that'll work. And then now we need to make our groove. So I'm going to press Control D, that duplicates. And that means now it's in the exact same position, hasn't moved at all. And now we're going to right click, select all these children, and I want to give this black color. So just go with that black right there. And I don't really like this bluish tint it has, so I'm going to move it down into this white area. And it gives like a black that isn't too deep of a black. It's you can see it's a little bit towards the gray end, but that'll work for us for now. And now, so this is going to be our groove. And because I want the groove to actually be different, I'm just going to move it up by 0.1, like so. And then lastly, I'm also going to get rid of this section here and this section here, just because it's kind of off a little bit, just having the rest of the racetrack. Now obviously we don't want the groove to be the entire racetrack. We only want the groove to be part of the racetrack, and we're going to go also and name this groove. So I'm going to select all the children, and now I'm going to use a plugin called F3X. And if you want this plugin, you can go to the plugins, and it's this one right here, Building Tools by F3X by Gigs D4X. I trust this plugin. I know that it's not doing anything malicious. People that I trust for plugins are Gigs D4X, and also any of these ones that say Stravant and it says that it is by Stravant. Stravant is actually someone who works at Roblox, so you can definitely trust him and his plugins. But those are the main plugins I would be trusting. The rest of the stuff I just don't know enough about the people behind them, so can't exactly be recommending. But back to our groove here. So I'm going to use F3X. We're going to go to our plugins tab. We're going to do F3X. And with this, we can go to this resize. And with resize, we can actually resize all parts at once. So you can see how that is working like that. Now what's happening here is this part right here is rotated 180 degrees from the rest of these. So what we can do is before we start, we can select just this piece by holding down Alt and then rotate this around. And now we can go back to our groove and we can resize it. So I want to give it a little bit off the bottom lane, just leave this a little bit of edge. But then I want to make sure that's way away from the top side of the racetrack. Try to make the top side come in. And now you can kind of see there's some overlap. If this was a banked racetrack, you actually wouldn't see this happening because they would kind of go into the banking. Because this is flat, that's why that's happening. So we can actually fix this a little bit by, I'm going to set the mode to both, and then we're going to resize in this direction. So now what's happening here is it's kind of messing up, like trying to get the straightaways to line up. It's not going to make the turns line up. This track isn't extremely well made, so that's why there's going to be some issues. And we can just kind of go back with the regular resize tool and fix some of those issues. Just get everything looking good. I'm just doing things by hand real quick. So there we go. And we'll just continue doing this until we have it down the way we want. Now another thing you could actually think about doing is if you want to make the groove appear on the outside of the straightaways, you could actually move this up like this, and like same with this one. Same with this one. And then you could have like this piece here, right, stretch into it. Like, getting that selection. Like so. So you can kind of do whatever you want. Just for showing this purposes, I'm not going to do that with the whole track. we can kind of see how this is working. And there we go. Yep. Actually, there's a little bit left right here. Just do that real quick. So now our groove is ready. So now what we're going to do with our groove is, well, actually, first off, we didn't do it with our track surface before. So our track surface, we're going to come down, custom physical properties, where you're going to find friction. So we're going to click that, and now we're going to open that. And here we can see it is 0.7. So I'm going to actually give it to be 0.45. I always turn my elasticity to 0. And we're going to make our friction weight 1. This is how strong the friction is going to be for a 0.45. So if you actually want to make your elasticities, that way there's absolutely no bounce at all, you could actually up your weight by a lot. But I like keeping our weights at 1. And just for me, I'm going to do friction at 0.45, but to each their own. There's really no issues with that. And then our groove, we want to do the same thing too, because it's actually going to get worsened over time. There's a way for us to go about doing that. So make it 0.45, 0, and 1. So there we go. So now we have those. And now I just want to go ahead real quick and make our groove transparency 1, because it's going to come in. And so now we need to work on how exactly is that going to come in. We're going to use into a model, name it track. And also I just want to real quickly go ahead and make this something other than concrete, just because it's going to give the groove a little bit more of a pop if the groove is concrete and the rest isn't. So by the end it'll look something like that. So that looks good. Like I said, we want to make it transparency 1 for now. And then we're going to go ahead and make we're going to make another group. So we're going to insert an object, another model, and we're going to name this groove detection. And inside groove detection, I'm going to want another part. So I'm going to just select this track surface here. I'm going to duplicate with Control D again. And then I'm going to move it into groove detection, just because then I'm going to also come down here to size, and I can tell that 451 is how long this straightaway piece is. I'm going to make it 1. So it's going to come right down to the middle. It's actually a really useful trick if you want to make a finish line really easily and you want it to be right in the middle. That's how you can do that. But so anyways, we're going to make this a checkpoint for us to hit. And then so we want to make it can collide false. And I'm going to make it green because it's our finish line. And I always make them transparency 0.5 and smooth plastic. And then we're going to make another one for the backstretch. You'll see why that becomes important. So that'll line up. And then this one, I'm going to make red. So I'm going to name this one check, and this one finish. So now that we have these two up and running, we need to put some code in them and make them do stuff. But actually, before we do that real quick, we're actually going to go ahead and do one last thing here. We're going to make a value. So we're going to look at the value, and we want it to be an int value. This is an integer value. And we're going to name it num_laps. So now we want to go into our finish block, and we're going to insert an object and script. So now we start our scripting. So in this case, we are going to do a touched event. So first things first, let's type in local. So local is how we're going to make what's called variables. And variables are something that we can call upon over and over again. So local finish equals script dot parent. And so what this means is script dot parent is finish. And we can actually see this by when we're on script, it says parent is finish. So you could actually, so what's happening here is script.parent is going into the script's properties, looking at the parent property and noticing that it's finish. And finish is marked as you can see here, workspace.track.grooveDetection.finish. That's how Roblox is able to keep everything straight, is knowing where everything is in the workspace. So our local finish, and we want to make a touched event. And so for this, we're going to type in function to make a function, and then it's going to be an on touched, and then we do a hit because we want to be able to pass in what we're going to hit. And when we hit enter, you can actually see it comes down, and we get an end automatically placed. So now we're going to want to do an if hit. So this is going to find what it hit, what hit our finish block. So we're going to do if hit, and then we're doing a colon, and then we can do what's called is-a, and then we would do parentheses, and this looks for what kind of object it is. So we're going to put some quotation marks, and if it is a vehicle seat, then. So now we have, essentially, we have some code that every time a vehicle seat hits this block, it's going to get past this point, and it's going to do something. And so that helps us see when a car passes it compared to just a person walking by. And then I want to put actually another value in here, and this is going to be called a bool value. And a bool value is just a checkbox, essentially true or false. So if the checkbox is unchecked, it's false. If the checkbox is checked, it is true. And we're going to name this checkpoint value. And we're going to put another if statement in here. If hit dot checkpoint value, or actually we should do, guys, we should do this better. We should do local checkpoint value equals hit find first child. So this is going to be looking inside the vehicle seat and seeing if we can find something called checkpoint value. And then we're going to put an if statement now. If checkpoint value equals nil, then. So essentially what this is going to be looking for is if the checkpoint value does not exist inside the vehicle seat, we're going to do script clone and, or sorry, not script clone, script dot checkpoint value clone. And we need to put a variable to this. So local new value equals, and then we're going to do new value dot parent equals hit. And this is going to put it in the seat for us. Now, what we can do, so we would assume that if they haven't had a value put in their seat yet, they haven't made a lap yet. So instead, we can do else if checkpoint value dot value equals true, then. So what this is going to do is if the person's checkpoint value is true, then we're going to do something. And in this case, it's going to be, so back up here, we're actually going to make another variable, local laps equals script dot parent dot parent. So this is going to go script.parent.parent. So now we're all the way up to groove detection. .num laps. You can see it actually comes up for us. And so we're going to do now laps.value. So in our laps, the value property equals laps.value plus 1. So essentially, if somebody's checkpoint value is true, then we're going to make this go up by 1. And then we don't want them to continue to be able to just drive back and forth on this block. So then we're going to do checkpoint value dot value equals false. And so if you actually notice here, we have 2 equals here versus only 1 equal here. So 1 equal means that we're setting the value. So in this case, laps.value equals, we're setting it to laps.value, so whatever the number already is, plus 1, right? This equals, however, is during an if statement, we're saying if this value already equals true, we're not setting, we're checking. And then, so this is going to be everything we need for this script, except for, lastly, we need to do a touched connect event back to our onTouched event, or function, I should say. So in this case, it's going to be script. Well, actually, we can just do finish.parent, or sorry, finish.touched connect, and then onTouched. And we get rid of those parentheses that got made. And so now this is going to be our entire script counting laps for us. And so I'm just going to name it lap counter because it's going to essentially give us laps here. And then we're going to press Control D to duplicate it. We're going to put it in check. And checkpoint handler is going to be the name of this script. I like to X out of both the code and then reopen them both, just to make sure that there's no weird bug going on with this. Make sure I'm writing in the code I want to write into. So in this case, I'm actually going to change the name of finish to checkpoint, which means that I need to change it here too. There's really no need to do that. You could leave it if you want, but for me, this is just easier, so that way when I'm opening these scripts, I don't need to look at the name. I can just look here and I already know what's going on. So now in the case here that they come around to the checkpoint value, or the checkpoint, and they don't have a checkpoint value, what we actually want to do is give them that value, but then we can also do new value.value equals true. And then here, if their value is false, we'll just make their value true. So this means every time that they hit the checkpoint, if they don't already have the value in their car, we'll give them the value and we'll make it true. So now the next time that they hit the line, their lap will be considered completed. However, if they already have the value down here, and that value is currently false, then we'll give it to true. We could also just completely take this out. The other thing we could do is just do an else. So if the value exists, just make it true. But that means we'd be getting to the point of setting the value every single time that they touched it, regardless if they had already made it true. It's really about the same thing though. But for me, I just like the simplicity of having our code look very much the same across both of these. So this is going to help us count the laps with cars. And the best part about this system is we don't have to do anything to the cars to make them automatically just start to do this. So I can plop in any one of these cars I've got here. So for me, I'm going to put in our dirt late model. And it will just automatically start doing this because the late model is a vehicle seat in it. And a vehicle seat does not need to be named vehicle seat. Oh, I am very far away. So, so we went through right there. We can actually go through and check. So this is the car I'm in, George the Dev car. So we go into our vehicle seat and we can see there's our checkpoint value. And if we continue to watch on this, we can actually see when we come back around here to the checkpoint, you'll see it now has the check mark. And then when we come back around to hit the finish line, the check mark's going to go away. And the reason the check mark went away was when we come back inside the track and we look in groove detection, number of laps is now 1. So now that we have all of that figured out, we need to get into the meat and potatoes of doing the groove itself. And so how are we going to do that, you might ask? So we need one more script. So in this case, we're going to insert object and another script. And this can really be anywhere. For me, I'm going to decide where I want this. I guess we'll put this in groove detection, and we're actually going to put this in the number of laps. And we're going to name this GrooveScript, because this is going to be doing our groove stuff. So we're going to do local laps equals script.parent, because that is where that is. And this time, we're going to do what's called an onChanged function. Sorry, I should say onChanged function. So function onChanged, and then for us, we're going to do property. So whatever you write in here is just what's getting passed through to the function by that line that we were putting at the end of the touched, for example. And so in this case, we're going to do laps, or laps.changed connect, and then type in onChange. That's our function name. So what's happening here is essentially when something changes on our num laps, that's going to trigger this event to occur. And then this is going to make this function here, whatever we write in this, run. So if the property that gets changed, so basically if any of these things change, it's going to cause this to run. The property in particular that changes is the value. So if property equals value, then, and now here's where we're going to end up doing some code. But first, I want to make a few things known to the script. So just for testing purposes, we're going to make max laps equal 5. You'll want this way higher, but having max laps as 5 helps you see what's happening a lot quicker to make sure that what you are doing works. So now we're going to go ahead and when the property changing is value, we're going to go ahead and say local new transparency equals so it's going to be laps.value divided by max laps. And the reason I wrote max laps as full capitals is this is what you should be doing if you care about how your code is what you should be doing for what would be a constant. So this is not going to be changing at any point, other than if you change it ahead of time, essentially. But when the game is running, this is never going to change. So that's a constant. And one more thing I haven't actually discussed yet is if you do a dash dash, you'll see it gets, for me, it gets darker. For you, it's different depending on what your script colors are. And this is a comment, so you can write anything here and it won't do anything. So if you want to like be like, this is a constant, just so that way you can remind yourselves of things later. That's what comments can do. Now, we're also going to do if new transparency is greater, or I'm trying to think about which way we should actually do this around, because I just realized the math for this won't work. So if 5 laps are in, divided by 5 laps, we're going to have 1. So I want to go the other way. So if max laps divided by laps.value. Oh geez, I'm messing up the code here. There we go. Max laps divided by value. So this is going to be 5. When we're 1 lap in, it'll be 5. 2 laps in, it'll be 2.5. I guess this math isn't still working out either. Just trying to think about what the math for this is. I'm sorry, guys. I'm kind of messing this up here. So I guess we could do laps.value, max laps, because this is going to be 0.2. So then we can do new transparency equals 1 minus new transparency. So the first lap it'll be 0.2, then the second lap it'll be 0.4, and then third lap 0.6, and so on and so forth, meaning that this will slowly chip away from the 1. Okay, so that's how that's going to work. And then we're going to go ahead and do if new transparency is greater than or equal to 1, then new transparency equals 1. Just that way our transparency is always maxed out at 1. Yeah. Or 0. It should be 0. We want this to go the other way. So less than or equal to 0. There we go. So now this should work the way I think I want it to. You can really see the prep for this video was great. And then what we're going to do is a for loop. This is a big part of this process. So for underscore comma, and then for me, I'm going to call it groove parts in pairs. And then usually I would do a folder, but for this I'm going to call it groove. I would usually call it folder and get children in there. So now we need to define what our groove is. But lastly, we want to do a do in there. So we need to define what groove is. You can see that's why it's redlining, is it doesn't know what groove is. So local groove equals script.parent dot parent dot let's see, script.parent. So we need to go one more parent dot groove. And then we're going to do if groove parts. So this is each of the groove parts is part or parts is wedge part or groove parts is mesh part. Then and that should really get you everything that you would have for a track surface. I can't imagine you guys using anything else. But I guess some other things you could add in here is you could also do is a corner wedge. or a whole host of other things. If you're unsure if something isn't working quite right, click on the part that isn't working. And you can see like this finish block is a part. This value is an int value. So whatever the things in your groove are, so all my grooves are parts, and we select all of them, you can see they're all parts. So for me, I'd only need parts, but I'm just making this so that way, if I want to transfer this over, this will transfer over just fine. And so now we're going to do groove part dot transparency equals new transparency. So this is going to just make the transparency change over time. And then the other thing we want to do is local start friction equals groove. So we're going to go into that folder, and just the first block that we decide to come to that is called groove, because they're all going to be the same block. So this will work. And then dot dot custom physical properties dot friction. And now we're going to need to set a new custom physical property. So I'm actually just going to make one. So local new friction is going to equal a physical properties dot new. And so we can actually see what we can stuff in here. So for us, we really don't need much. We can just do a density, friction, elasticity one. So in this case, for us, our density that we already have here, we can actually just go ahead and set these as well. Local density equals groove dot groove dot custom physical properties dot density, and local elastic equals groove dot custom physical properties dot elasticity. And then we actually want to move this to down here. Actually, we're going to name this new prop. And then we're going to make our own local new friction. And we'll get to that in a moment. So for this, we need to do density, comma, new friction, comma, elastic. Like so. And then we're also going to come here and do parts custom physical properties equals, and then our new prop. So that's going to set this here, and our new friction is going to be so based on what we want our final friction to be. Final friction equals 0.1. And then we just need to come up with a formula to be able to get us down to 0.1, and we're happy for that. So it's for this, it should be max laps divided by laps dot value. So this is going to be equal to 1. Oh, I forgot the equal sign. Like that. And then we want to multiply that by the change in what our friction is going to be. So we want to do start friction minus final friction. And so what's going to happen is like the first lap around, for example, well, let's say the last lap, the max number of laps. So it'd be 5 divided by 5, that's going to give us 1, and then 1 times, so the starting friction is going to be 4.5 minus 0.1. Oh, sorry, that's not going to work. Times 1. So actually we want to do, so because this is going to be the change, and then this is the amount, so do start friction minus, and then put this whole thing in parentheses, and that'll give us what we want. So now at this point, I'm just give some spacing, make everything look a little bit cleaner. So now at this point, what all this code is going to do is this section here is going to give us our transparency of what to set each of the blocks at. This right here is going to give us our new friction for the groove blocks. And then this right here is going to set all of the groove blocks to be exactly the same, both for transparency and for the new friction that we need to give to it. So now we can finally test out what this is going to be like. And as you know, we only set it for 5 laps, so you're going to see it change very, very quickly. Every single lap I finish, it's going to be 1/5 of the way gone. So you're going to see the color change very drastically. And then also the area in which the groove is. It's going to be, what do I drive on? So it didn't do what we thought it would do. So this is why you always test things. So it should have done what I thought it should do. So we got our number of laps. And then our grooves, friction's still staying the same, and transparency staying the same. So this is where we need to find what went wrong. Print something changed. And so this is why we have our output window. And so we can actually test quicker if we start over here, because remember, we actually give ourselves a checkpoint value when we go through the checkpoint. So we only need to go half a lap to be able to get the full lap. Let's see if something went wrong with our, so it is triggering the something changed. Maybe it didn't like the idea of the property value. So we actually really don't need this particularly because we're only going to be changing the value anyways. So let's try this again. See if maybe it did not like the property of a value. And now we should come around and attempt to call a number value, line 18. So now we see an error. Line 18, laps.value. Interesting. Let's do a print. So this is kind of the process. I'm just going to leave this all in the video. It's kind of the process of when you code. Sometimes you thought you did everything right, and apparently you didn't. Select value is 1. Attempt to call a number value. local lap is laps.value. Let's try that. And before, that's the line 18 before? Yeah, it was. Just making sure I'm not losing my mind. Something about the math sequence going on there seemed to mess things up a little bit. Attempt to call a number value. So maybe we can break this down into separate sections here to see where it goes wrong. So we'll start with just the change. So we'll do start friction minus final friction. And then new friction equals new friction. So we'll already have that piece done times max laps divided by lap. And then lastly, new friction equals new friction 1 minus new friction. And that should hopefully help us where I went wrong. And so because we got rid of that if statement, that's why I kept trying to jump over. So we can actually do a shift tab and on all that, and we'll move it all at once. So let's now see what happens now. Hopefully get us to the root of what the problem was. Oh, and there we go. So that fixed it. I guess it just did not like trying to compile all that math in one sequence there. I must have messed something up with how the parentheses were, I'm guessing. But now you can see the color is changing very rapidly. And so what you're kind of seeing is, so it's because it's all transparency, you're kind of seeing some overlap of parts. So obviously that's causing kind of this weird look to it. If you have a lot more parts, that overlap will be much smaller, a lot less noticeable. So that's not too big of a deal. However, if you'd like, I can show you guys how to change that. Just this is a easier way than having to do a bunch of math with how colors work. So we'll go ahead and we will fix that. So we're going to do something called HSV. And we're going to also have to kind of, we'll get rid of this. So local H, local S, and local V equals, then this part's going to depend to go. So the local H is going to be script dot, or sorry, we can do groove dot color dot, trying to think about how we go about doing this. So I know it's groove.color. I think we can, let me try groove.color color equals color3 to HSV. Number to HSV, color3 turns the hue. Okay, so we can do, I think, HSV, and then we're also just going to do a print HSV. And then local color equals groove dot color. And we don't even need to then go test this. I'm going to be able to test this right in our output. Did not like that. Oh yeah, because doesn't know what groove is. Of course. So let's just start with the base plate. That'll work easier. Workspace dot base plate. Big duh moment there. Requires a color3. Oh, color. And we can just test that here. Color expected, got instance. Oh yeah. Dot color. Now that should. Yes. Okay. So these are all in that format. So now H equals H times 255. Then we can do the same thing. S equals S times 255. And then V equals V times 255. And now, because we don't want to get this too dark, well, first off, we actually need to go ahead and first off, we want to change this back to groove. Groove dot color. And I'm just going to call it G color, just so we know it's groove color. And now H equals H minus 1. S equals S minus 1. And V equals V minus 1. And I'm just going to do a modifier. Local modifier equals 5, or say 50. And we'll just do it minus the modifier. So we're going to just set this modifier eventually down to 1 to make it go slower. But just for purposes of showing you it happening more quickly. And then as well, something to go with this is we're going to want to actually make the groove back to 0. And then also make it the same color as everything else. Like so. And you'll see it change. So then local new color equals color3 dot from HSV and then HSV. So right here. So I just want to test real quick. Color3.from HSV. If like 250, actually I think they're, yeah, or just want to remember what our HSV values should be. Yeah, they're out of 255. However, yeah, okay, because we need to divide these all by 255, like so. And then groove parts dot color equals new color. And now we can get the color to change over time. And then you guys won't have that overlapping issue with the transparency. Some people probably clicked off after it worked with the transparency there. So some of you are going to have a little bit different system. It immediately went to black, which was not quite what I was wanting. Let's print H, then print H, and then lastly print H. Just so we can kind of see what's happening. I think my modifier is probably too big. Probably the H and the S and the V are probably all too small to be modified by 50. Yeah. Went too far. 0.10. Just because I want to try to show you guys when it gets changed. Try to make it change a little more rapid. So HSV, the reason why we do HSV instead of RGB, like many people are more used to, HSV allows us to keep the brown color longer. So you can see it's still very brown, but just slowly darken the brown. I see I'm like sliding through the brown stuff here, and now it's black because it went too far too quick. We'll make the modifier 1 again. But yeah, so, and actually the one thing I never actually did show was that the friction was working. And so when we make it 1, you'll see a much slower time progression. And then the last thing we want to actually do is set a level of darkness to it, so that way if it ever goes past that point, we won't allow it anymore. So you can actually see each lap it's slowly getting darker. And if you want to slow this down even more, you can make that modifier less than 1. The thing you have to think about is, so with me by myself on the racetrack, the amount that it's going to go down is obviously less than if you have 10 cars out on the track. 10 cars out on the track make 10 laps like that. So my recommendation is for max laps to, first off, let's do our modifier actually down to 5.5. And then lastly, the other thing I wanted to do was if V times 255, and we will encapsulate that, is less than or equal to 30, then v equals 30. So our value, when we do our color stuff, each time we're bringing this down, it's going to move you closer towards the right. Every time you move the saturation down, you're going to get closer to gray. And every time that you bring your value down, you get closer to dark. So the ideal formula is to get to a 0, and then this low. So you can actually, let me think about it, you can actually keep the hue the same. Oh, we should keep the times 255 because we do that. Divide by 255 to it. But you can keep the hue the same because that'll keep kind of the brownish color, and then these two are going to get it closer to just being a regular gray or black, and then the value is going to push it towards being black. But making it so that way it doesn't get too black. When you get to like it just being pitch black, it doesn't look quite real. So we'll add that little chunk in there. And that is how you can change up all the colors to it and not have transparency. In my opinion, the transparency that I was set up for you guys before, it's a little easier to deal with because then you're not really thinking about the colors. Like you might have to deal with these colors. And then the last thing we should also do is if v goes below 0, then v equals 0. And that's just to prevent that from, or not v, sorry, s goes below 0. Just prevent it from rewrapping back around up to the top when it becomes a negative number. So at this point, that is your final script. And what I was about to say was, so with max laps, what you're going to want to do with that is take the number of cars that you plan to run times the number of laps you plan to run across the whole event. And really think about what number of cars realistically you're going to have across the whole event, kind of figure out the laps in your mind and do that math. So if you're doing a heat race, right? Let's just do some comments here. So heat race, let's say 2 of them. So you'll have 2 heat races, 2 heat races multiplied by, let's say they're 8 laps each, times, let's say you have 5 cars each. That's going to be 80 laps right there. And then let's say now you're having, let's say you just make everybody from that go to the feature. So you'll have your 1A main times, let's say 25 laps times 10 cars. That's going to be 250 laps. So then you would add that together, you get 330. But then the thing about that is you want to think about there could be some extra laps in between that, and maybe you had more cars show up than maybe you wanted. So find out what that number is that you think, and then maybe just add maybe 50, 100, whatever you think is going to work for you. So like maybe for me, I decided that 500 is the way I want to go. And just kind of trying to find the right balance of laps can help you out with making sure that the track doesn't die off too soon, but also is dying off by the time the event's over. But if you want it to die off quickly, then you can just keep that pretty low. And because now the max laps is 500, we'll see when I come around and I finish a lap, the amount the friction fall off of the groove area is not going to be that high. And you can actually kind of see the groove here is really kind of a bump up from the rest of the racetrack. So if you want to try to get that a little closer to flush, feel free to do that. So I just crossed the track. We go to our groove, we come down to friction. and the friction got set to 0. That would explain why I was sliding across it. So, anybody who's still now watching, I made some kind of mistake. So let's see. This will be the change. Okay, I can see. Because we did, well, 500 divided by 1. It's going to be 500 times 0.35. That's going to be, oh boy. I actually do math down here. Really, I can't do the math. Or, no, I can do it. There we go. 175. Okay, so we did this math wrong. I'm trying to think what. Actually, we want to do it the other way. Because now, or divided by, so it's going to be 1 divided by 500, multiply that by 0.35. It's 0.007, and then, because that will be the change, then if we do 500 divided by 500, that's the overall change. So then we can do start friction minus the new friction, and that will be the correct one. There we go. Now we fixed it. So anybody that stuck around to the end actually has a working friction, because I screwed that up. So I know this video has gone on really long, and my lack of deciding to edit this video is going to be what keeps it long. But I hope that, I guess this kind of shows the realistic behavior of what it's like to be coding on Roblox. Even somebody like me who's been doing this for a while makes mistakes. And that's why you got to make sure that you back up your mistakes. And so you can see it's now printing what the friction is, which means now when I go look at it, that is what it is. And so that is going to work. And last thing I would always do with my scripts is remove those prints, just so it's not printing in the output. So that, my friends, is going to be the entire GrooveScript. Like I said, if you want to maybe make this groove a little bit more flush, you can always do that. Maybe bring it down by 0.05. 0.05 is the smallest a brick can be on Roblox. You could even try to make it a little more flush than that, but honestly, I think that's flush enough, in my honest to goodness opinion. And that is everything with the GrooveScript. This video is 1 hour and 10 minutes, and I'm sorry for that. But yeah, there you guys go. Now you guys know how to do this, and I hope to see more of this in more dirt racing.